What up, y'all? This DJ Illmatic coming back at you live and direct, straight from my crib, USA, daily operation, episode 7. Back once again to chop it up with you about all the goings on in the gaming world today. Now, being a relatively new podcast, I'm going to continue to evolve and improve and change things up as I go and learn. And one of the things I wanted to do is add some names to the segments I bring you. And so the first segment where I talk about the games I played last week, we're going to call that Electric Relaxation. Shout out to all my Tribe Called Quest fans out there that catch the reference. But since I love playing video games and that's how I relax, we're going to call this segment here Electric Relaxation. Now, of course, got to start off talking about the Order 1886. That's what you're checking out on the video. That's what I spent most of my time playing this week. And I have to say, first and foremost, I absolutely love this game. Don't get caught up in all the negativity surrounding it and all the low review scores. Trust me, people, this is a very, very, very good game, and I encourage everyone to check it out. I'm not necessarily saying you should go out and buy it because really there is no replay value, and we'll get to that later. But hey, this is definitely worth a rental, and it's definitely a game everyone should check out and play. We'll talk about the things it does best first. Graphically, it's gorgeous. It's one of, if not the best new gen game out so far. In my opinion, it's the best looking new gen game so far. So people have asked me about Rise. In my opinion, it looks better than Rise. That being said, if someone wants to argue that Rise looks better, I wouldn't argue with them. I also got to keep in mind I haven't played Rise in about a year, and so it could be one of those things I forgot how good Rise actually looks. But regardless, the Order 1886 is a beautiful game. It also tells a great story. Now, don't worry, people, I'm not going to have any spoilers in this, but I will tell you it uses a plot device where it starts off in the beginning towards the end of the story, and it shows you something that has you asking questions like, wow, how did we get to this point? And then it goes back into time and shows you the events that led up to that. And so by doing that, it really hooks you in early in terms of the story and what's going on and keeps you engrossed and wanting to continue to play. Now, I will say for me, the pinnacle of video game storytelling is The Last of Us and probably the Mass Effect trilogy. It's not on the level of those games. It's several rungs below that in terms of storytelling. That being said, it still tells a great story, does a wonderful job of mixing in fiction and nonfiction. It has Nikola Tesla and Marquis de Lafayette and Knights of the Round Table and the East India Company, all these things that existed in real life, but then it mixes in the fantasy of the werewolves and various other things. And so I love the story. One of the best parts, the character is very interesting. The voice acting is superb, and so the setting of the game I also love. So all that works together really well with the graphics to present a great experience. Now, in terms of gameplay, the order mixes together. It's half Heavy Rain and half a third-person cover shooter. Now, for those people that aren't really a big fan of those QTE Heavy Rain type games, I can tell you the order does a great job of never staying on one of those gameplay aspects too long. It goes back and forth between the two, and so before you can get tired of doing all the QTE events, it has you do third person shooting, and before you get tired of the third person shooting, it jumps back to the other. So it switches back and forth nicely, does a good job of doing those things. In terms of the third person cover shooting, it's not exceptional. It's definitely decent, but it's not exceptional on a Gears of War type level. I do enjoy the weapons. There are a lot of interesting weapons I enjoyed using. Now, the problem with it is some of the weapons, the more interesting weapons, you'll only be able to use one time in the story and never again. And so the fact that you can't use some of your favorite weapons whenever you want to is kind of disappointing. But overall, the weapons are very interesting. Another enjoyable part of the game. A little bit of disappointment was the battles, especially the battles with the werewolves. The werewolves are deadly creatures. They're very much larger than you, and so you would expect the battles to be a lot more to them, and something you really had to work hard to defeat. And I can honestly say it wasn't that. The werewolves, once I realized the pattern of what I had to do, I knocked them out and killed them just as easily as the rest of the enemies. And so that's a little bit of disappointment there. I wish it made it a little bit more difficult in terms of dealing with the werewolves, because these are the boss battles, or the hardest characters on the game to defeat, and so to be able to defeat them just as easily was kind of disappointing. Also, a big question about the game, or a lot of things people were talking about early on, was the length of the game. I think I spent probably about 8 hours my first playthrough on the story. That being said, I did focus on getting all the collectibles. I went back, probably spent another hour going back and wrapping up and finishing up all the trophies, and so I ended up getting the platinum in about 9 hours. I don't mind spending $60 for that experience. I love the experience, and it was worth every dime to me. That being said, I also collect games, so I don't never trade anything in, and so I wanted this in my collection. So I'm happy with the $60 I spent. That being said, there really is no replay value, and so if you're one of those people that trades games in, I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to buy it, but I would definitely encourage you to at least rent the game and play it. Now, another criticism I heard about the game is the pacing. I honestly didn't have any problem with the pacing. I thought it told a great story, and the pacing did great to move that story along. Now, it doesn't adhere to the video game standard of pacing or how a video game is supposed to be paced, but it does a great job of telling a story, and it moves the story along at a fine pace to me. And so I didn't have any problem with the pacing. There are some chapters that are long, and then you have some that maybe 10, 15 minutes and don't involve you doing anything but pushing a button once or twice, or there's one where you don't even do anything. That didn't bother me. I'm not the type of person that thinks every chapter has to be a set standard or you have to do something in every chapter. Like I said, it told a great story and it focused on telling the story and not so much on adhering to any video game tropes about the pacing and whatnot. So that's not an issue for me. It does a great job of setting up a sequel. Some people criticized it for that. I actually liked it. It left several loose ends at the end of the game, which definitely sets us up nice for a sequel. But to the credit of the game, I want to know what happens next. So I'm looking forward to a sequel. Now I hope all the negativity of the game surrounding the game doesn't destroy that possibility, but it left me wanting more. It left me wanting to know what happens with this person and that person. So it sets up for a sequel nicely, and the story itself, the story it tells, is good enough to where I want to know what happens going forward. So once again, I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. The Order 1886, like I said, if nothing else, just rent it, borrow it from a friend, but you have to play this game. It is a great experience regardless of what any review says. Also spent a little time this weekend wrapping up Sunset Overdrive. I finally beat the game. Once again, it's probably, in my opinion, Sunset Overdrive is probably the best new gen exclusive so far. I really enjoyed the game. And so if you haven't checked out Sunset Overdrive, that's another game you'd want to check out. But Sunset Overdrive, The Order 1886, love both those games, so make sure you check them out if you haven't already. Now, this next segment we're going to call Buck 'em Down, because this is a segment of the show where we buck down all the foolishness and ignorance in the gaming world today. Shout out to all my Black Moon fans that caught that reference there. Now, this week we're going to chop it up once again about gaming reviews. Now, I know we talked about reviews last week, but I wanted to build on that conversation, especially in light of all the negativity surrounding the Order 1886. Now, one thing that bugs me about reviews is how people approach them. Too many people approach a review like it's a fact, like it's a mathematical equation, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, and there's nothing you can say or do in this world that's going to change that. That is not what a review is. A review is someone's opinion. And so anyone that's played that game and has an opinion, their review, their opinion is valid. And so if you look on Metacritic, and we'll take the Order for example, the highest score for the Order is a 95, the lowest score is a 40. Understand that both of those reviews, both of those scores are completely and totally valid because that's that person's opinion. And you disagreeing or agreeing with that opinion doesn't make it any more right or wrong. That is that person's opinion. Anyone who has played the game is entitled to their opinion of the game. Now, people like to say everyone's entitled to their opinion. No, everyone is entitled to their educated opinion. So as long as you played the game, your opinion of that game is valid. Now, I might not have to agree with it, but that doesn't make it any less valid. You don't have to agree with my opinion, but that doesn't make my opinion any less valid. One thing that does bug me and that needs to stop is gamers who sit there and read a review, watch a video, and then form an opinion on the game. Now, if you want to watch a review and say, I don't want to support this game because I wasn't impressed with the review, that's fine. But if you have not played a game, you cannot have an opinion on a game. You cannot say this game is terrible, this game is great if you haven't played it. This is an interactive medium. And if you haven't interacted with the game, you cannot have an opinion. And if you don't agree with that, think about it like this for a second. Let's say a new game comes out and you head to IGN or whatever your favorite website is to check out the review on that game. You pull up the review, you begin reading the article, and the very beginning of the article it says, I didn't actually play this game. I just watched a couple of videos and listened to what a couple of other people thought about the game, and I wrote my review based on that. If you read that on a website, you would say that that website, or at the very least that reviewer, had lost complete and total credibility with you, and that they're a clown for saying something that ignorant. Yet too many gamers say the same ignorant, clownish things all the time. They watch a review, watch a video, and now all of a sudden they're speaking on forums and social media about how good or terrible the game is. If you do not play the game, you cannot have an opinion of it. So keep that foolishness to yourself. Now, when dealing with game reviews, it's also important to understand what goes into each person's opinion of a game. Now, the first thing that goes into an opinion of a game is the expectations of the reviewer going in. And I'll use The Last of Us for an example. Going into The Last of Us, I didn't really have a whole lot of expectations. I'm a big fan of Naughty Dog. I love the Uncharted series, and I was intrigued by them having a new IP. But other than that, I hadn't seen any videos, I hadn't read any previews, so I didn't have a whole lot of expectations going in. That being said, The Last of Us is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion. It's an all-time favorite for me. I absolutely love the game. On the flip side, I had a partner that didn't play The Last of Us until it re-released on the PS4. Shout out to my boy Project Storm. He went into the game with tremendous expectations. He had heard all the praise heaped on it by people like me. He had read all the reviews and saw the Game of the Year awards. And so by the time he went into the game, he expected a game that was made by the Lord Almighty himself. And so, of course, that game didn't live up to his expectations because they were so tremendously high. And so this had a negative impact on the game. You also have to think about if there are any bias, or we all have bias, but what biases does the reviewer bring into the game? And so, for example, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and so because of that, I'm a little more forgiving to a Star Wars game because I appreciate being in the Star Wars universe so much. I enjoy that so much that I'll let some other things slide and generally have a good impression of a game. Whereas a similar game that doesn't have that Star Wars crutch for me, I'd probably be a little bit more critical of it. It can work the opposite way. Someone who's a big fan of a franchise may be more critical because they're more aware of the backstory and the lore of the world, and so may be more critical if that goes against the canon of their beloved franchise. And you also have to think about the difficulty of a game. Now, I'm not talking about the overall difficulty, but we all have those certain games or certain parts of the game that were easy for everybody else and you struggled with. I use The Order again as an example, watching Kinda Funny Games, and Greg Miller talked about how he struggled on a garden portion of the game. And so because he struggled on that portion, it left a negative impact on him in terms of his overall opinion of the game. Me, I breezed through the garden. I didn't have any problems, didn't die once, and so that didn't leave a negative impression. And so that affects my overall opinion of the game. And so all these things go into influencing the overall score. You also have to keep in mind that a reviewer has to account for everything: graphics, controls, gameplay, sound, story. All of those things go into coming up with that one score. You might not be concerned with all those things. So, for example, if you just love a good story, a game may struggle in everything else and tell an amazing story, and you would still have fun playing that game, and you could look past all that other stuff because you love a good storyteller. But you'll miss out on this because all you'll see is the score. And so, people, stop relying on reviews. You know yourself better than anyone else in this world. No matter what reviewer you like, y'all will never agree on anything. You know yourself better than anyone. So read previews, look at videos, use your own intuition, and figure out what you like best yourself. Quit just looking at a score, because when you just look at a score, you're missing out on a whole lot of fun experiences and great games that may struggle and may deserve the low score because they don't do a couple of things right, but you would love that game because it does what you like most about games the best. And so quit relying on review scores totally and completely to form your opinion of a game. Rely on your own instincts when making gaming purchases and gaming decisions. All right, y'all, that's all the time we got for you on Daily Operation this week. Once again, it's been DJ Illmatic, Daily Operation, Episode 7. Check us out, 8bitchamp.com, for all that gaming flavor you savor. Check me out this week on 8bitchamp. I got an article going up entitled My Gaming Story. I basically walks you through my life and my love affair with gaming, so please check it out. Once again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, DJ_Illmatic. Like my videos, holla at me in the comments. Also, get at me on Twitch at the same address, DJ_Illmatic. And holla at me on Twitter, DJ Illmatic23, no space, no underscore, that's all together, DJ Illmatic23. Get at me at one of all of those joints, and I will holler back at you. Holla at me in the comments. Let me know what you think about gaming reviews. Fat shout to everyone out there that's showing love and watching the videos. I appreciate the love. Fat shout to my Organized Gamers family. And once again, people, remember, if you're not having fun playing games, you're doing it wrong, y'all. This DJ Illmatic, Daily Operation. We out, y'all. One.